Hello, I'm Colin,
And I'm Charlie.
and this is a special episode of C&C Talks. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, just a reminder, we release episodes every week. We talk about politics, world events, and sports. As of taping, it is Monday, October 28th, 2024, at about 8:30 p.m. Pacific time. And don't worry, the normal episode is coming out later this week. And we do have a special announcement. Next Tuesday, during the election and the
Next
morning
Wednesday
after,
morning. Wednesday morning.
Wednesday morning, we will have a results special announcement episode that's coming out. And just a warning, we will probably be operating on zero sleep, so you can enjoy us completely collapsing in on ourselves while we record that.
Well, yeah, exactly. Live on YouTube, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, the morning after the election. We don't know what we're gonna know at that point, and we will talk about whatever we do know after what will surely be
And
a
that
yeah,
should be the entire crew as well.
exactly, yeah. So we'll talk about everything that we do know, probably on zero sleep from, I guess, what we're gonna call the C&C Talks election bunker.
The election bunker
Yep. So
opening the shotgun.
yeah. So without further ado, let's get into our election preview special now. I believe when this comes out, it's going to be 6 days until the election. So
Wow.
make sure that you go vote. Every single vote counts. If you have not voted already, go to the polls, make your voice heard. You can go to iwillvote.com for more information on voting in your state to make a plan to vote. Again, every single vote is so important. Charlie, let's start with the biggest race of them all, the presidential race. And what we are presuming, we'll talk about third-party candidates in a sec, but we're presuming it's Kamala Harris and Tim Walz versus Donald Trump and JD Vance. And Charlie, I think the place to start with this, and by the way, this episode it's not gonna particularly be about policy. It's not really gonna be arguments for a candidate or another. This is just
A
horse
preview.
race stuff. Who is going, not necessarily who is going to win the election, but what's going to decide the election.
Well, it comes down to, in the end, 7 states: Wisconsin, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona.
Yep. That's it. And we can call that a flaw of the electoral system, and we should, but that's what it comes down to. There's a small possibility that it could end up coming down to Nebraska's second congressional district. However, I find it increasingly likely that you can go ahead and put that in the Harris Walz column at this point. You can go ahead and give her that electoral vote. But for those other states, I mean, Charlie, is it really just a toss-up in all of them?
Not quite. I would say Wisconsin, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and North Carolina, yes. Georgia and Arizona, I would say, are starting to lean to the Republicans. They could still change with just over a week to go.
Yeah, I mean the thing with Georgia, I think that's really interesting is that this might just be my impression, but I think that the facts actually do bear this out. Is that recently their polling in Georgia has actually been quite good. Um, the final results, and I believe the both Senate races in 2020, as well as the presidential race in 2020 and the Senate race in 2022, I believe essentially what happened was exactly what the polling said was going to happen. And right now, the polling in Georgia is showing a tie.
Now, real quick, just before we continue, what polling source are you currently using?
I'm not looking at a specific number at the moment. I'm just thinking back of all the polls I've seen over the last couple weeks show
I am currently
pretty
using,
much a
just
tie.
for the sake of transparency, I am using both 538 and New York Times.
Yeah. So what's the polling average that you're getting in Georgia at the moment?
So New York Times has Georgia for Trump by 1, and 538 has Georgia for Trump +2.
Yeah. So very, very, very close. And
And as I said, with a week to go, that can change.
that can absolutely change. I think we started to see better early voting numbers for Democrats in Georgia than we saw in the first few days of early voting in that state. But again, I feel like just this whole election is it's going to be so different from 2020 because in 2020, right, Democrats had the overwhelming advantage with mail-in ballots, early voting. That's not necessarily going to be the case in this election. I think that they'll still have the advantage, but
but
I
not
think
this huge, overwhelming one.
exactly. And on the other hand, that means that Republicans aren't going to have quite as big of an advantage with the election day vote. So it doesn't really matter, but it's just in terms of the numbers that we're seeing right now, it's kind of hard to draw specific parallels to 2020. It's kind of hard to say, oh, these are bad numbers for Harris, these are bad numbers for Trump, because we don't know what it's actually going to look like on election day. And that's really the thing is until we actually start to see votes getting counted, we don't know.
Well, and the thing I want to focus on is the numbers that I'm getting. This is for Wisconsin for
Yeah.
538. Currently, as of 7:45 on Monday, they have Harris at 47.8 and Trump also at 47.8.
This is Wisconsin.
This is Wisconsin according to 538.
Yeah. So yeah, let's say if the polls are as wrong as they were in 2020, then is winning all seven of these swing states. However,
That hands him the election.
yeah, exactly. However, we saw in 2022, again, Trump wasn't directly on the ballot, but we saw in 2022 polls underestimated Democratic support. Could we be seeing the same thing here?
Yeah,
Possibly.
it's a question of there's three options. Either the polls don't miss, the polls miss like they did in 2016 and help the
In
uh
2020.
the polls swing one way and help the Republicans, or they swing the other way and help the Democrats like they did in 2016 and 2020.
Yeah. Again, there's no way of knowing, which is why you shouldn't really be looking at polling, but I get it. Polling's the one thing that we like really have. Like you can look at rally size, but that doesn't tell you anything. I mean,
Yeah.
sure,
So
Trump's not filling his rallies. That's a bad sign if you compare it to 2020 when he was. He's become somewhat disinterested and people are leaving his rallies. Okay, that still tells me nothing about whether he's actually going to win the election or not.
yes. So real quick, Colin, let's just do a quick little, shall we say, prediction. Now, let's just go through. Obviously, some of these states are obvious. Let's just go through the states, all of them. Doesn't matter
Yeah,
how obvious they are. Let's fill out a map. So Alaska's going for the Republicans, obviously.
sure, obviously.
Hawaii for the Democrats. The Pacific
Yeah,
Coast, all Democrat.
yep,
Idaho is Republican. Here, let me just fill out all these states that are in the middle of the country.
yeah.
Um,
Just fill everything out except for those seven states.
Working on it. I do need help with the Maine and Nebraska
Nebraska.
congressional
Yeah, yeah.
district.
So Maine would be blue, everything blue except for Maine's second district, and
Thank
Nebraska
you.
would be if all red except for the second district.
Okay, thank you.
And yeah, while you're filling that out, I'll talk a little bit about Nevada because I I'm not an expert on Nevada politics. I can't really say exactly whether the early voting numbers are good for Trump or good for Harris. I will say that somebody who really does know Nevada politics, John Ralston, who's covered Nevada politics for decades, seems to think that these are very concerning early voting numbers for Democrats so far in Nevada. Um,
Okay, so I
so
filled it out up
that's
to
concerning to me.
yes. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything that should be pretty clear. Pacific states, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, the Dakotas, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas. All those are Republican. Virginia is Democrat. Whole Northeast is Democrat.
Yeah, pretty
Florida is
much.
Republican. Okay, so let's go through this. I'm going to use the New York Times poll here. If we assume that all the polls hold where they are, that gives Trump North Carolina, Georgia, and
Yep.
And it gives Harris Michigan.
Yeah.
So at that point, Trump has 262
Uh-huh.
with 4 states to go that are all even.
Yeah. 3 states to go.
So meaning no
Wisconsin,
four: Wisconsin, New Mexico.
New
So
Mexico?
sorry, New Mexico. Sorry, that's my fault.
Yep. So I could argue that like I said a minute ago, Nevada, it's not looking great for Democrats. The good news is that it's unlikely that Nevada would end up deciding the election. Like it's a swing state, but there's a very, very slim set of circumstances that would make it matter. That would make because it only has 6 electoral votes.
Yes, and so if you do the math,
Yeah,
if you give in this situation that I have right now, I think this is basically the closest scenario that I think is realistically achievable.
yeah,
North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada go Trump,
yeah,
and Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania go Harris.
yeah.
That
She has 270.
that gives
Exactly.
Harris 270 to 268.
And this has, by the way, always been her play. Like this has been the map that she is trying to carve out. If she wins the Rust Belt, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, she wins the election.
Now,
If she can pick off one of those Sun Belt states, either one of the ones that Biden won, or if she can flip North Carolina, it would be very hard to come up with a scenario that Trump wins the election.
yes,
But I
now
really do think
so
it comes down to Pennsylvania.
let me just real quick fill up a map again. If we assume polling numbers stay the same again, let me set up the scenario here. If you, Colin, should we talk about just another state while I'm setting this up? Should we talk about for the sake of it, we haven't talked about it. Let's talk about Michigan. Let's talk about the potential of some possible ability for the Democrats to basically throw away their chance to win Michigan from the far left Democrats.
Yeah, I mean that's really what Michigan's going to come down to. I feel like
Yeah, and
how
I saw
how big is that how big is that pro-Palestine vote? And that I think is really it's a big issue in this election in not in terms of Harris versus Trump, but in terms of Harris versus not voting from people to her left. And I think that could have a major impact in the state of Michigan specifically. Or Michigan versus Jill Stein. We'll talk about her candidacy in a couple minutes as well. But I think ultimately, I don't know if that voting bloc is going to be as big as some people think it's going to be, but is it big enough to affect the election? I mean, we're talking
given
it's
how
going to
close
come down to a few thousand votes.
I mean, given how close that state's going to be, any small little faction going one way or the other is going to change who wins this election.
Yeah. This feels like a Harris must-win state, I think.
Yes,
Although I feel like we're not discussing the possibility either that Wisconsin could absolutely go to the left of Michigan this year.
it could.
So
But yes, so here, I'm setting up this scenario. Did I do something wrong here? I must have, because something with the math here isn't lining up. Hang on, give me a second to figure out what. Oh, that's what I did. The scenario that I have set up is Trump takes the Rust Belt. Sorry, Trump takes the Southeast. Harris takes Wisconsin and Michigan. So it comes down to Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
Trump wins Pennsylvania, he has 288. He's clear.
Yep.
If he loses Pennsylvania to Harris, they are tied at 269 apiece.
What is this if Trump wins Nebraska second?
Oh, hang on. Yes, it is if he. Oh, yes, I misclicked on one of the main districts. So yes, this would be
270 for
yes. So hang on.
Harris.
Maine is blue.
Blue in District
blue.
1, red in District 2.
Okay, cool. So blue, red.
Yeah.
Yes. So that would be another Kamala Harris 270, 268. But yes, as I said, if it goes the other way, and the thing that Harris cannot do is if she wins a state like Arizona, but loses Michigan, it's over. If she wins Nevada, but loses Wisconsin, it's over.
It's over. Yeah, exactly. Now, if she can win Arizona and Nevada, then that might be the election right there too.
Yes, but and one more. The best case scenario for both of these candidates here is if Harris wins all of the swing states. Harris 319, Trump 219. Now, if Trump takes them all, then it's Trump 312, Harris 326.
Yeah. Now, before we move on from this aspect of things, we're going to discuss this more on next week's episode. We're going to publish an episode on election morning, and we're going to go over what to actually expect on election night, almost a viewing guide. But I will say something here that I will repeat on that episode. Florida's going Republican. And I know it's so easy to overreact on election night to Florida election results because They count their votes really quickly due to Florida state law, just how their vote counting process works. They count their votes really quickly. It's one of the first state polls to close, so we know the results really early. It's so easy to overreact to that state. I just want to remind you that in the year 2022, when Democrats won major statewide elections in Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, Ron DeSantis won Florida by 20 points. It really doesn't matter what Florida does. I will say, don't take anything away from Florida about how the rest of the country is going to go. It doesn't matter if Trump wins it by 30 points or Trump wins it by 1 point. The only thing that would be notable is if Harris wins Florida, not because, that would say something about the rest of the country, but because it no longer matters what happens in the rest of the country. Kamala Harris is going to win the election.
Yes, if you look at the next tier up of not the swing states, but something that is still technically achievable that could throw something wild in the results, like Harris steals Florida or Trump steals Virginia, then it's over.
Yeah.
They win.
Yeah.
If any candidate steals a state that was basically guaranteed for the other side, the election is over.
Yeah, pretty much. Especially for if Harris can manage to take Florida or Texas. Like, it's not happening. But
yes,
it would end the election.
To give an idea of what that map looks like, we give Trump every swing state. Harris takes Florida. Harris wins the election. Not going to happen in all likelihood.
Yeah. Now, we touched on it, Charlie, a little bit, but what's the effect of Jill Stein on this election?
Bad for Democrats.
Well, sure. I mean, I don't know if there's that much else to say. Jill Stein exists to hurt Democrats. That's her goal. I think we should remember that. We'll see if she's successful this time. I don't know. I'm still somewhat confused by her, but in a very, very negative way. Charlie, what are some other important issues that you think will help decide this election?
Well, we already touched a little bit on the war in the Middle East.
Sure.
But I think the big one is the economy.
Sure. I think the other big one...
that is really an unavoidable issue because it is not a winning issue for.
I mean, we are seeing polls now that show it pretty close in terms of the economy, which is really interesting because Republicans have always enjoyed a huge polling advantage on the economy. It'd be interesting to see if Harris's economic message really is working. Where I feel like Trump really leads into polling is immigration. And
absolutely.
I think
and
even like
in a
Democrats,
state like Arizona and a state like Nevada, that's going to help.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, like, we often see Democrats lead on big issues in polls, but Republicans still manage to win. Trump's still popular, and I think a lot of that is just inherent racism. I mean, we saw some of the comments at Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden. We'll go over that more. Full episode coming out later this week, but like we saw those comments, like that does appeal to a lot of people, and that's in a lot of ways why Trump is able to have electoral success. The other thing, though, what could be really good for Harris in this election, this is the first presidential election in the wake of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. It is just like in 2022.
Pretty big boost.
Yeah, just like in 2022, when it was underestimated how big of an effect that would have on the election, I think there's a very real chance that has a major, major impact on this election, specifically with how women vote.
Yes, I do want to just a little bit more talk about the future for both these parties coming out of this. And I think the notable thing, not even with who wins, but on issues.
Yeah.
The main question I want to ask you is how much longer do you feel that the Democrats can continue to run abortion as one of their main force?
I mean, I think it depends. I think as long as it's still a major issue, because I think women are still gonna be very upset when they are in these states that have abortion bans. I think this is going to still be an issue as states continue to try to impose abortion bans, as Republicans potentially try to fight for a national abortion ban. I think this issue stays in the spotlight. Will necessarily quite as much attention be focused on it? No, but I think when it comes to election time, this is a message that Democrats are going to try to run on. And it's probably the issue that Democrats poll the best on. So I don't see why they wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, just for the sense of just pure election strategy, it is certainly a winning issue for them. So I think
Yeah.
they should continue to run on that as long as they can.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit about just the final week of campaigning at the presidential level. Seeing again, we're recording before this, but Tuesday, Harris giving her quote unquote closing argument speech at the Ellipse on the Capitol, which is the same location that Trump held that Stop the Steal rally on January 6th. Of course, we know what happened after that. So certainly, I imagine she's going to be talking about the issue of democracy, which is
Yep.
obviously a very important issue in
And
this
just
election.
real quick to note,
Yeah.
it is now officially 9 o'clock on the West Coast, meaning that we are 1 week away.
Yep. As of this recording, I guess that's true. That's scary. That's really scary.
Well, it all comes
Uh,
down to this, doesn't it?
yeah, we don't fully know the candidates' full campaigning schedule for the next week. We'll see if Trump goes back to Grand Rapids to do his final rally like he did in 2016 and 2020. But I expect both candidates will have a lot of rallies. I expect we've seen Obama on the trail through the election, but Charlie, on the bright side, we're a week away from the end of political ads for the time being.
Good.
Um,
Good.
it'll make football watching a bit more enjoyable. Now the one other aspect that we haven't talked about this presidential race, and then we'll move on to races quickly, is what happens after the election, right? We probably should brace for some amount of potential violence.
No matter who wins.
Yeah, no matter who wins. But I feel like especially if Harris wins, we saw everything that Trump tried to do after the last election. What does it look like after this election?
Well,
'Cause
I mean,
it's going to be different. But
I think
how?
given the situation in just the government in general right now, if that situation that we were talking about earlier, where it's 268 to 270, that's going to be sent to the Supreme Court.
There will be Supreme Court cases almost certainly.
No matter, this election could have the potential to go in as the closest election in the history of the United States.
I mean, but the other thing is, like, it could just be a blowout. Like, that's
Well,
possible.
yeah, it's weird because it's either going to be incredibly close or one side is going to win in an absolute annihilation.
Well, but doesn't that always happen? Like, isn't it always either close or it's a blowout?
Well, no, not necessarily. The last couple of years have been moderately close, but I wouldn't call them incredibly close.
I mean, the Senate's 51-49, the House
In
22-12
presidential,
or
in the
something.
presidential, it's been 306 to
232. But
yeah,
it's come down to
306.
it's still come down to just a handful of votes in key states, though.
Well, it usually does,
Yeah.
unless
I
it's
mean,
like
this is
1984.
yeah. I mean,
Where
this is again the problem with the electoral college system. Gee, wonder why no one bothers trying to campaign in California, the biggest state in the country. Well, except for Trump, who went to for no apparent reason. Those voters are ignored under the current system. Let's move on to Charlie, to the Senate, and let's just talk to start off when we're looking at
I
the
haven't even
Senate,
been really paying attention to that very much.
just the general state of play. We've talked about it before on the podcast. This is a very, very, very bad Senate map for Democrats. They currently hold 51 seats. However, they have 8 seats that they're trying to hold on to that they that are going to be very close, or just Republicans are going to win. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, Ohio, Montana, and West Virginia. Now, West Virginia, Joe Manchin's not running for that seat again. They're going to lose that seat. They're not even really a play for that seat. So that puts them down to 50-50, which means they have to hold the other 7, or
and that's
they have
not
to
happening.
pick up a seat.
Picking
Now,
up and that's very tough for them.
yeah, no, so let's talk about some of these races that they have to hold on to. Let's start with Pennsylvania. Bob Casey running for re-election against Dave McCormick, the Republican challenger. This is a state that Casey should probably hold on to. Wisconsin, similar, Tammy Baldwin running against Hovde, I think is how you say his name, and Hovde is he's from California, like he lives in California. kind of like Dr. Oz lived in New Jersey, except this is even further away. This could be a blowout. Tammy Baldwin is almost certainly going to win the seat. Michigan has tightened up a bit recently. This is an open Democratic member of Congress, Alyssa Slotkins, running for this seat. It's running against Congressman Mike Rogers. This should not be a Republican flip. I expect that Democrats at the Senate level will win the Rust Belt. I think these states are primarily just interesting because of the presidential race, and polling is showing this as well. All Democratic Senate candidates running several points ahead of the Harris-Walz ticket. Nevada's another interesting one. Jackie Rosen, the incumbent, being challenged by Sam Brown. Again, another seat that I think the Jackie Rosen should probably hold on to. Arizona, though, Charlie, this is an interesting one because this is the Kirsten Sinema seat. She's not running for re-election. We see Democratic Congressman Ruben Gallego running, and then failed Republican candidate for governor Carrie Lake running on that side of the ticket. She's still claiming she won that 2022 governor's race. What are your thoughts on that?
To the answer to your second one, I'm not surprised whatsoever. She denied the results of the 2020 election and then decided to reject the results of the 2022 election. And you have to imagine if she loses, she'll do it again.
She's down somewhat big in the polls, though. Like, kind of surprisingly, like she was up in the polls for the governor's race actually in 2022. She is down pretty bad in Arizona at the moment. Then, Ohio. Ohio, this is a seat that Democrats really they could hold on to. Republicans didn't nominate a particularly good candidate in Bernie Moreno. Sherrod Brown, incumbent, popular in the state. They could absolutely hold on to the seat. Montana, though, this
But
is
they
beyond
do
an
have to
uphill
hold them. They do have to hold them all to retain control.
Yeah, and Montana, this is the uphill battle. Montana,
Oh, this one,
it's just
Colin, this one just isn't happening.
yeah, no, it's just the state's just changed. And it's kind of sad in a way. John Tester, the incumbent, he is nobody that is from Montana more than John Tester is from
Yeah,
Montana.
and
Like
the state
he
has
just
changed too much.
embodies the state. That's how he's managed to win the last few cycles.
And to be frank, with this election cycle and where Montana is as a state, there's nothing he can do.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll make it closer than someone else was able to do. Just like he knows the state. Again, this is why he's been able to get elected. But with the way like things have gotten more partisan, less split ticket voting, combined with the fact it's during a presidential election year, and then just the makeup of Montana has changed. A lot of Republicans moving there from out of state. They'll be able to vote there. They don't know him because they're not from Montana. This feels like an election that Tim Sheehy is going to be able to win to knock off John Tester.
Yes.
Now there's two other seats though. Two opportunities that Democrats have. One of them, again, it's not Florida. One of them is Texas. Now you might be asking why. I'll tell you why. It's Ted Cruz's seat. That's why it's close.
Ted Cruz is his opponent. Allred, I believe, is his name.
Yeah, Colin Allred.
Is he not? Was one of his ads not the fact that Ted Cruz is so bad that even the Texas sports teams aren't winning?
Essentially, he's gone after the fact that Texas sports teams always lose when Ted Cruz is in attendance. And I mean,
he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. And
also, unfortunately, LSU could not keep up the streak against A&M.
Yeah, I do believe Cruz was there.
He was.
Yeah, Colin Allred's run, I think, a pretty good campaign, by which I mean he's not Beto O'Rourke. Because guess what? Running on a campaign of banning guns in Texas is not going to go well.
I thought you were going to say Mark Robinson, but
oh no, I'll get to him. But
thank you.
Yeah, no, Colin Allred, he's run a good campaign. He's a former football player, current member of Congress. Ted Cruz has, shall we say,
and
Ted
Cruz is Ted Cruz.
Yeah, he's Ted Cruz. So this is a seat I think Democrats could pick up. I think their odds are better here. But what I think is more interesting here is if they do manage to flip Texas blue in this race. Again, it's not a 50-50 shot. It's not even particularly close to that, I don't think. But if they can somehow manage to flip Texas blue here, that would not just possibly give Democrats the Senate. I think that would just have widespread implications. Just the fact that Texas would have, now gone blue. I
Well,
don't know if
and
we as a country are just prepared for the ramifications politically.
if as you said, it is not very likely, but if that does happen, does that mean you could potentially see them flip in the presidential election in 28?
I mean, I think Texas is just trending in that direction in general.
Which is surprising because I've always generally when you can think of the base of each party, it's California for the Democrats and it's Texas for the Republicans.
Well,
But
sure. I mean,
is that
I think it's just like the cities in Texas are growing,
yes?
and
And the
they're
question
growing with
is,
Republicans.
yes, the question is that Republican base state now becoming Florida?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, probably.
Because I think it
Um,
is.
yeah, no, Florida may just be a lost cause for Democrats. Again, Harris is not winning
And
Florida unless
2000 was
somehow
their
she
chance,
does
and they're
by
never going to
miracle.
get that close again.
The other one that's weird, like really weird, is Nebraska, the Senate race in Nebraska.
Oh, I've
It's a
heard about that.
Republican versus an independent in this seat. And the independent, his name's Dan Osborne. He won't say which party he'll caucus with. If I was to guess, it would be with the Democrats. In fact, I think he said he would caucus with a party. That's not realistic. If you don't caucus with a party, you don't have any power in the Senate because committee assignments. I don't know what his thinking is, but this would definitely be a win for Democrats if he's able to knock off Republicans. Sure. Why is he why is he popular? Does he have a chance at doing this? He's a union leader. He's just generally his policy wise, he's run a good campaign, and because he's not tied to the Democratic Party at all, it's been hard for them to run against him. It took so do I think he'll win? No, but I think this could also be another race to watch out for.
All
Now,
right,
again,
should
this
we talk
doesn't
about
mean
the
that it
House?
was to help the Democrats win the Senate because we don't know which party he'll go
We
for
should
it.
talk about
Yeah, let's do that. The House.
this. This is where
We
things get interesting.
we do not usually see a House of Representatives that is competitive in a presidential election year. The
But
last
this
time,
is going to be close.
yeah, the last time that the House flipped parties in the presidential election year, 1952, and it flipped away from the incumbent president's party. So the tides of history are against the Democrats here, but at the same time, there's things in their favor, such as Republican dysfunction in the House, right? They couldn't choose a speaker, such as some new maps in Louisiana and Alabama that net the Democrats an extra seat. This was because of the Supreme Court ruled it racial gerrymandering, such as hopefully the New York Democratic Party not being completely this year. There are a ton of close races, and the Democrats really just need to pick off a few seats. So it's absolutely a winnable House for the Democrats this cycle. And Hakeem Jeffries could very well be Speaker of the House come January 3rd. Any other comments on the House?
I mean, this is incredible to me for the pure reason that if you switch the votes of about 20,000 candidates in one state, 5,000 in another, just based on polling data, maybe someone was feeling something one day and then not feeling it the other time.
Yeah.
You could change from from the Democrats holding all three to the Republicans holding all three, just like that.
Yeah, this is also just going to be a wild election night just because, right, 2020, I think it was like in the 8 p.m. Eastern hour that the House was called for Democrats.
Yes, almost immediately.
We're on an election night now where I don't know how many people will actually be following the House that closely, but it's absolutely worth keeping an eye on all of these competitive seats
Well, yes,
all election night long.
and unfortunately for us all, I do not think that we're gonna know who wins this election by the end of the night.
No, especially in the House because it's probably going to come down to California seats. Here's the problem, right? You don't
California
necessarily
ever.
notice this in a presidential election year because California, it's like statewide, it's blue, it gets called as soon as polls close. But in some of these competitive House districts, you start to notice it. California takes weeks to count their votes.
Why that is, I don't know. Partially
It's
because they're
because it's big.
It's big. Yes. I that was my guess, was that it's big.
Yeah, that's really it. Let's quickly talk about a couple of governor's races. There's only really two that are close this cycle. First, New Hampshire, Chris Sununu not running for re-election, which means this race could actually be competitive. Ayotte for the Republicans, probably the favorite to win this race, but it's a lot closer. It's going to be a lot closer than it has been in past years. Now, Charlie, you alluded to it earlier, but there's an interesting one in North Carolina.
Yep. Colin, I'm gonna give you the honors of doing this one.
Yeah, Mark Robinson exists. If you don't know who he is, we've talked about him. We don't want to keep talking about him because
Look him up.
he's creepy and gross. He's probably going to lose. Probably single-handedly going to lose this Republicans this governor's seat if they had nominated this governor's race. But I think the bigger problem for Republicans here, right? I think Robinson's done. Josh Stein's going to win this. The bigger problem is, does Robinson pull down Trump in North Carolina?
Given polling from what I've seen, I've also pulled up now the polling data for The Hill. The Hill, ABC, and 538 are all giving Trump the lead still.
Yeah,
in North
it's
Carolina.
very slight.
Yes, but if you look at the history, when Robinson had all those, that stuff come out about him, it did drop Trump in the polls a little bit, but he has since recovered.
Now, finally, let's talk about some key ballot initiatives. Let's start, Charlie. Abortion on the ballot in several states. There's several states with initiatives that would establish constitutional rights to abortion in the state constitution, including Nebraska, Arizona, Florida, Montana, Missouri, Nevada, and to a slightly lesser extent, South Dakota. Some of these states, you need more than 50% of the population to vote for these. Like Florida, you need 60%. But at the same time, when abortion has been directly on the ballot since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the pro-choice position has not lost. What do you make of this, Charlie?
Well, it has not lost yet, but Florida is a big challenge.
Yeah, 60% is tough, especially I feel like the communities in Florida might not be as pro-choice as the rest of the nation.
Yes, but it'll be interesting to see, because if it can pass here, I think it will be able to pass pretty much wherever.
Yeah, again, if it gets 60% in Florida. So again, if more and more states can get this on the ballot, that's a pretty big deal. A couple other big ballot initiatives. We're seeing states potentially instituting ranked choice voting. States like Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, even Oregon could institute ranked choice voting system for some local elections, state and local elections. Whereas Alaska, there's a ballot initiative there to repeal their system, primarily because they believe that's what's gotten a Democrat elected to Congress from Alaska the last couple cycles, something that could very easily happen again this cycle.
Anything else for today?
Yeah, the one other issue, several states with the potential to legalize recreational marijuana. South Dakota, North Dakota, sorry, not Nebraska, but Florida as well. Those are, so ballot initiatives, very important as well. There's a whole bunch around the country. Those are just some of the big ones that we named there, Charlie. Any other races or aspects to any of these races that you want to before we sign off?
Not particularly.
All right, that's going to do it. Reminder, 6 days from Election Day as of when this episode's released. Every single vote counts. Go to iwillvote.com for more information to plan your vote. That's going to do it for this special episode of C&C Talks. Charlie, episode coming out a bit later this week, wherever you listen to your podcast. As we get closer and to Election Day, you can visit our website, cctalks.com, to learn everything you need to know about the show. Call us with your questions. So 389-2630. Again, that's 360-389-2630. You can follow us on Twitter at CC Talks Podcast. Follow Charlie at CC Talks Charlie. Join our Discord server, cctalks.com/Discord. All this information and more is in the description below. But for now, for our producer Morris, production designer Zack, I'm Colin.
I'm Charlie. And we'll see you later in the week.